everyone. Welcome to our session on adopting branding strategies that cut through the clutter. I'm Rhoda Weiss, National Healthcare Consultant, and chair Becker's Spring and Fall CEO conferences, as well as very excited about sharing these new conferences on branding, marketing, and patient experience. This is what we're going to talk about today. The fact that engaging memorable brand strategy can cut through the clutter of words and sounds, create both market share and mind share among stakeholders, differentiate organizations from competitors, create emotional connections with target markets, build buzz and brand recognition, generate pride among staff, and so much more. Today, you're going to learn the strategies, tactics, and techniques three very different yet highly successful brands have taken and continue to implement. You'll learn their comprehensive and measurable processes, their creative work, moving volume, driving campaigns, and measurable outcomes while adapting to major changes and challenges facing all of us in healthcare. First, Mark Bohen. Mark Bohen is the Mass General Brigham Health Chief Marketing and Communications Officer. He leads marketing, branding, data analytics, consumer research, digital, social, and internal and external communications. The system's 78,000 colleagues care for 1.5 million patients annually across 16 entities, including Harvard Medical School academic medical centers, specialty teaching hospitals, and community hospitals. It is NIH's top-funded hospital system with $2 billion in funding. Previously, he was an executive at Beaumont Health, Assurant, and Nabisco. Next, Sharon Clary is Vice President, Strategic Marketing and Communications for AdventHealth, a large national health system with 85,000 team members and physicians who care for 5.5 million patients annually in 51 hospitals and 1,200 care locations across 9 states in the South, Midwest, and West, and with revenues of $12.5 billion. In addition to her corporate role, Sharon also leads communications, partnerships, and physician and corporate sales for the flagship AdventHealth Orlando, with 20 plus hospitals and ERs, 40 plus outpatient facilities, and nearly 4,000 physicians. Jennifer Schultz is University of Oklahoma's OU Health Senior Vice President of Marketing and External Relations. She leads marketing, branding, media, communications, research partnerships, and growth activities. Oklahoma's only academic medical center, OU Health includes University of Oklahoma Medical Center, Oklahoma Children's Hospital, Community Hospital, and Diabetes and Cancer Centers. Jennifer also leads marketing and communications for University of Oklahoma's Health Sciences, one of just 3 in the United States with all 7 medical health professional colleges. So let's start with Mark telling us a little bit about your journey.
We have 2 academic medical centers, 3 specialty hospitals, community hospitals, research institutes. So it is a wide array of entities and services. And 3 years ago, we made the decision to transition from Partners, which was a holding company, and managing a portfolio of very well-known and excellent hospitals, to an integrated health system, an integrated academic health system. And we changed the name from Partners to Mass General Brigham. So that's been the journey that we've been on for the past 3 years or so. And of course, COVID has interrupted our plans greatly, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Thanks. Sharon.
Yeah, thanks, Rhoda. Well, AdventHealth is in the 4th year of our rebrand journey, and this has been a journey. We've actually exceeded our results in half the amount of time that we anticipated, but what I want to focus on is that our CEO at the time, he really said, you know, I really want to, as I'm coming into this role, I really want to set the stage. I want to think about this rebrand differently. And I want to make sure that we're fully expressing who Adventist Health is. And that's really whole person care. And so today we call that feeling whole, and it's our brand promise. But it's been a great journey, and I'm excited to talk to you all about it today.
That's wonderful. And Jennifer, OU.
For OU Health, it's been a journey that has been a house of brands that were really kind of all over the place, where there was not really a common thread through our various centers, colleges, and hospitals and clinics. And so, I came here and inherited a significant amount of logos, a lot of variation inside of them, and really through the research that we'll talk about in more depth, learned that we would really have a more cohesive, community-oriented, understandable brand if we were to look at being OU Health, which is where we landed. So I'm excited to talk to everybody about it. We're about a year and a half into our rebrand and started studying our brand for the first time really about 3.5 years ago. I've been here for 4 years.
So Jennifer, talk about the research that informed your brand.
Yeah, just for us, our research started with looking at association and taking a house of brands and trying to understand if people knew who they belonged to as far as the health system in the region. And it was very shocking to our leadership team to realize that some of our marquee programs, people's perception was that it was part of our competitors' organization. And so that really started to inform a lot around our research. We also started to look at name association and attribution of qualities and started to say, if we're going to be a branded house, should we be medicine, that was part of the legacy brand, or should we be health? And in that study, we really saw that the qualities and characteristics that people saw in health versus medicine was more in alignment with where we were heading as an organization with our strategic plan and our vision.
Great. Mark?
Thanks, Rhoda. We did quite a bit of research before we developed the plan. We really wanted to understand how Mass General Brigham would resonate in each of the local markets. And we also wanted to understand how the Brigham would resonate with Mass General patients and how Mass General would resonate with Brigham patients. And so we did quite a bit of research, and we're very comfortable and decided to use the name Mass General Brigham as the endorser brand or the parent brand, and we preserve the equity in many of the hospital brands because they do have a lot of value in the local marketplace.
So quick follow-up question, Mark. So did the Brigham people thought Mass General was okay, and did the Mass General people thought Brigham was okay?
The patients did, yeah. So the patients really felt by putting Mass General Brigham together, that was the strongest combination of the names. We knew we wanted to lean into the two academic medical centers.
And Jennifer, a follow-up. You had some competition of people who said they were children's hospitals, but they were just a few beds on a floor. So, and also, you have that really advantage of being part of University of Oklahoma, which has a huge brand. So how did that work?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we saw in the research is that there was an incredible number of names that people used for Children's Hospital. There were 33 of them in total. And to see that and to understand that people they knew that it was associated with an academic institution, they couldn't recall the name, started to have us really looking at how do we position that comprehensive children's hospital within an academic health system to be able to compete nationally across multiple specialties and to be really a regional draw. And so that's where we started to land on Oklahoma Children's Hospital, OU Health. And then the tie to the University of Oklahoma is so important. It's the biggest brand in the region and the state. And so when we started looking at that, we started to really look at that flagship academic medical center. And rather than saying OU Medical Center, which was the historic kind of legacy name, we decided to be University of Oklahoma Medical Center. So that way we would really be able to have that draw and that really strong tie to the university with those programs.
Sharon, your turn.
So Rhoda, thank you. We had different names, different logos, different color schemes across all of our entities across the 9 different states. So research really helped us dive deep into what consumers thought about how we should change our name and the effects on that. So one of the things that I think was most interesting was we were originally, and we had lots of different names, we were originally going to be AdventHealth. And some of our research showed that when you put the "ist" on the end, the name becomes very exclusive. And our brand, our DNA, is very inclusive. And so by dropping the "ist" and going to AdventHealth, it really opened up a whole new world and a whole new thinking to us. So very exciting work, but we used that research to really delve in, and we did it in every single market to understand how they would respond.
You really changed a lot. So what were some of the challenges in acceptance of what you were doing?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is this just couldn't be about a logo change or about a new marketing campaign. And I'm sure my colleagues would agree that it had to go deeper. It had to really go to the core of who we were and how we were investing and transforming our company. And we needed every single employee, every single team member to understand the why behind it. So this was a big challenge, really making sure that 80,000 team members really had an immersive experience that they could really gain insight and understand that why and what it meant when that patient or that consumer walked through the doors, how that patient was going to feel different, what it was going to be different.
We had a few challenges. I think the first challenge is, this was part of a much larger transformation that the organization is going through. So I mentioned earlier, we moved from Partners, which was a holding company, to an integrated academic health system. And so one part of that transformation was the brand change, but there were many other parts that were transitioning and still are transitioning. And so, it just becomes a lot of change and a very large change management project and transformation communications project that we're still undergoing. The other part of the challenge, quite frankly, is just the timing. We announced this right before the pandemic, and we put much of this on pause to make sure that we can focus on our patients and our employees. And so a lot of time did elapse, and we felt like we had to go back and revisit and remind. But that's just really couldn't be helped. We felt like we had our priorities in the right place.
And Mark, if it's any help, there were exactly 22 health systems that were changing their names during the pandemic, so you weren't alone. And Jennifer, you had some challenges because, the approval process also had to go to the University of Oklahoma Regents.
So OU Health sits outside of the university in a Oklahoma-based local nonprofit. So the clinical assets are not within the university. The University of Oklahoma has a tremendously large brand, especially thinking about it through the athletics lens. But when you think about that, that also means there's a lot of trademarking and licensing that comes along with it. And so the OU Health brand is actually the University of Oklahoma's brand, and they license it to OU Health. So I felt tremendously blessed to be entrusted to develop the brand as opposed to maybe the university developing the brand. So they really let me do that from the healthcare lens. But it also meant that there were multiple major stakeholders: University of Oklahoma Board of Regents, the university president, university executive officers. We also have a public trust, University Hospitals Authority and Trust. They are the owner of Children's Hospital, and that's been established by state statute. So the actual naming of Children's Hospital also incorporated our partners at the trust. And so just a tremendous amount of governance that we had to really work through. This was prior to us formalizing our merger of the clinics and the hospitals into one organization. So now OU Health is governed by a singular board. But this was really leading up to it. So kind of to Mark's point, there was a lot more change and transformation that was underway that was really also driving the need to be studying our brand and unifying our brand. And so there was a lot of governance that we had to work through on the topic.
Another challenge is deciding on brand architecture and how it fits with the very varying entities. So Sharon, I'm going to start with you because you had a lot of entities across a lot of states.
Yeah, we had a lot of entities and there was a lot of research. You can imagine a lot of discussion and then some. I think bottom line, we had to take ourselves out of it and we had to look at the consumer. We had to say, how will the consumer connect? How do we change our brand architecture, our vernacular, so that it really resonates with what consumers are saying about their health? So an easy example is, we reference our Cardiovascular Institute, but when we talk to consumers, we talk about heart care. So just one easy example of the kind of discussions and where we landed.
We did have a house of brands. We did not move all the way to a branded house or a master brand. It very much is a hybrid where Mass General Brigham functions as an endorser or parent brand. Now, the architecture does vary by where you sit in our portfolio of hospitals. So if for the two academic medical centers, Brigham and Women's and Massachusetts General Hospital, they get a prominent role in the brand architecture and are labeled as founding members of Mass General Brigham. We have the three specialty hospitals who are nationally known, play on the national stage, and they sit below Mass General Brigham, but are more prominently displayed. And then for the community hospitals, the Mass General Brigham functions as the endorser and is more prominently displayed. But the local brands do remain because, again, we found they have equity.
And so, Jennifer, I'm going to go to you because it's OU Health, but you really put a foot in the sand when you said, you know, we're really the only children's hospital, and you named it as such, and we're going to also use the University of Oklahoma name. So you want to touch upon that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are by and large a branded house with OU Health leading the brand, but we really sharpened our focus around sub-brands of OU Health like University of Oklahoma Medical Center, and trying to really identify those flagship marquee programs. We had a significant amount of logos that we had to prune and reduce through this process. So, you know, we have an OU Health Stevenson Cancer Center, we have an OU Health Edmond Medical Center. But the other thing that we did see in our research was that people did interact with and respond to children's hospitals differently with just the way in which they search for that and the way in which they view it when it's a comprehensive children's hospital versus a couple of floors inside of maybe a hospital that focuses more on adult services. So that is the only brand in our portfolio that is an endorsed brand. So it is Oklahoma Children's Hospital, OU Health. A couple of things around that is we knew that we had to tie it to the interlocking OU and to have crimson in it and to really have it shine as a university affiliated children's hospital, but also knowing the comprehensive nature of it and the fact that it is its own building, its own sort of set of specialists, anesthesiology and what have you, that it needed to be able to compete sort of regionally and be positioned for growth regionally with our other children's hospitals that are sort of in the, you know, concentric circle around us.
It learns to be a doctor. Doesn't color or do art. It learns to be a doctor. Doctors don't have superpowers, they're just really smart. Maybe the teacher teaches them about doctors. Dr. Botox really smart because he went to a yacht of stools. Oklahoma Children's Hospital. Our kids song. And hope is real.
What happened that you didn't expect? And what would you do differently? Sharon, you want to start on that?
Yeah, well, I did not expect that we would have so many places that our logo would be or our name. I mean, It was everywhere. It was inlaid in wood floors. It was blasted into concrete on walls. I mean, everywhere we looked as we started putting, you know, our inventory together, we saw our name and our brand. So an example is our Quaternary Center in Orlando, Florida. 30,000 signs alone at that one facility, that one campus. And then when you start multiplying, you know, floor mats, uniforms, badges, I mean, you name it, whiteboards in patient rooms, it just multiplies. And I think to do differently, we clearly learned that we shouldn't put our brand everywhere. We aren't NASCAR, and we should be very intentional about how we use the brand and how it comes to life.
Thank you for sharing that because that's terrific. And Mark, your thoughts on what you would do different?
Yeah, I think certainly the sheer magnitude and size of the transformation and the projects was a surprise to the earlier point about the number of places that had to be changed. The mechanical nature of changing all of the assets was huge. In addition, I think there are a lot of local needs that we have to pay attention to. So we had a plan and we stood firm by the principles that underpin the plan, but we also had to be flexible for the different stakeholders in internal and external constituents that we deal with that required some flexibility.
Thank you. And Jennifer, you were on a timetable, and because your flagship was being built, so it isn't like you had several years to come up with that. So what did happen that you didn't expect, and how would you do it differently?
Yeah, I think what happened that I didn't expect is that we decided to accelerate the launch of our rebrand because of our flagship medical center building a tower on the north side of the old hospital. And so it was this significant opportunity to not only have the new brand at the top of that tower, which is the highest point on our main campus, but also as we rolled that entire building out through a variety of things that actually had interesting modifications due to the pandemic. But still, as we rolled that out to the community, that we were starting that out with OU Health and University of Oklahoma Medical Center is the name of that location. And so, we have a lot of brand rules now where our brand is not on the floor. Our brand is not on trash cans. It's not on soap dispensers. You don't walk on our brand, things of that nature, to really have it in the places that it belongs. So that way, if we ever had to do a logo refresh, or there was going to be a contemplation down the road with our brand, that it would not be such a monumental task to eliminate old brands.
And I just have to say, with Sharon, for those watching, that Florida Hospital is maybe the largest in the country. So, but 30,000 is still a whole lot.
It's a lot.
So it's like, wow. So how many thousands are now? You've gone from 30,000 to a lot less at Florida?
Yes, I don't know that we've counted, but I don't have that number off the top of my head. A lot less, let's put it at that.
And because there's the cost factor, because one of the things that people who are thinking about doing it right now, that because we try to talk to everyone who's doing it just for the database purposes, is like, can we afford to do it? And I think Jennifer had a big advantage, is that they were rebuilding. She had to do the name really quickly, but there wasn't really a cost. So there's a lot of issues about signage that stop people from any rebranding, especially big systems. So how are you building buzz and brand recognition with the new name? And Sharon, I got you on screen, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think just one of the ways, because obviously we all have lots of different examples, but one of the ways that I think it's also a trend in what we're seeing out there is really this blending of marketing with communications and the blurring of the lines. And so it's just one more way that we are kind of elevating and creating buzz, but brand journalism, very, very important, influencers, and utilizing those types of strategies to really create buzz as you look at the full funnel of your marketing approach are really important to us.
Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Rhoda. So, if we think about the brand as this business or marketing concept that needs to influence, attitudes, perceptions, behaviors towards a company or a product or a service, I think about all the capabilities that we need to have here to compete more effectively. So we've spent a lot of time building those capabilities around consumer and patient insights and data analytics and brand management as a rigorous discipline, and how we develop and launch campaigns behind service areas. And we spent a lot of time in research, for that matter, thinking about the value proposition, which is, the other component of the brand. The visual identity seems to get most of the attention. We spend just as much time, if not more, thinking about that value proposition, which really flows from our competitive advantage, which is the research and the innovation that infuses our care. Throughout all of our messaging, whether it's advertising, whether it's other forms of communication, you'll see that value proposition of the research-infused care come through. You see it on our national TV commercials, but you see it in local commercials that we do behind a particular service area.
Mass General Brigham. When you need some of the brightest minds in medicine, this is the only healthcare system in the country with 5 nationally ranked hospitals, including 2 world-renowned academic medical centers. In Boston, where biotech innovates daily and our doctors teach at Harvard Medical School, and where the physicians doing the world-changing research are the ones providing care. There's only one Mass General Brigham.
Anything, Jennifer, to add about, you have these 7 professional medical, clinical professional schools. How does that all come together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, we are still on this journey around having the academic and research health brand reflected in the greater University of Oklahoma brand. And that's a significant amount of work around transformation of what the marketing operation looks like at the University of Oklahoma and how it interfaces and relates and connects to OU Health. But one of the things that is consistent is the OU Health piece, and having that pulled through and having that interlocking OU and everything. And then the other piece too, as we look at how do we approach communications, how do we approach media, how do we approach, community partnership work and things of that nature, that we actually are not splitting the tripartite mission in how we're presenting that. So we're presenting it as OU Health, and then we talk about OU Health Sciences within that. And that's actually really moved the OU Health brand significantly in a perception perspective around being the leader in the region around health and well-being and breakthrough and innovation. And so we're on the early end of that journey, but I expect that we'll continue moving down that path.
At OU Health, we believe in giving second chances, spending time with family and friends, crying happy tears, and celebrating. Like you, we also cherish milestones. We're healing more people, educating Oklahoma's doctors, discovering new treatments, treating the everyday, and solving the complex. OU Health. The future of health is here.
Sharon, you talked about you've got about 4 years of research since it started. So how did this name selection relate to increasing market share, mind share, revenue growth, and what's happening in that area? Because you have a little more time on this than the others.
Yeah. Well, we really invested in our branding efforts, really creating compelling, emotionally charged, really connecting to that consumer spots, and really building that out throughout the full funnel.
You can't wait for the future to come to you. You've got to reach out and take it. With some of the world's brightest minds, AdventHealth is reimagining care today and moving health forward in ways once never thought possible, so you can feel whole for your whole life.
That has been a design driver from day one. How do we really tell our story of feeling whole, and how does the consumer feel that through the spots? Additionally, I talked about the funnel. As we move down, we've invested in technology, we've invested in innovation. It's one of the cornerstones of AdventHealth. And so we've really looked at, what are the things that Amazon's doing? What are the things that Spotify's doing around personalization? And healthcare is very personal. And so we've built an engine around really talking to consumers and what we call precision marketing, and really talking to them about the way they want to be talked to, on the channels they want to be talked to, at the right times, and really delivering and serving up personalized information. And we have seen an unbelievable response. So across the board, we're really doing things across that full funnel to drive volumes.
Thank you. And Mark, selecting that name scares the heck out of your competitors, I'm sure, because partners, but you are saying that we're bringing these 2 really strong organizations together, and the community hospitals as well are getting that brand. So how do you think this will continue to relate to market share and mind share and revenue growth by having that name more in the forefront?
Yeah. Well, we are doing a lot to increase the awareness of Mass General Brigham. Here locally in New England, we do enjoy high levels of awareness. Once we get outside of New England, it drops a bit, and so we're spending a fair amount of time and resources because these Mass General Brigham These two academic institutions are national brands, and we feel like there's a lot of opportunity to attract patients from around the country and around the globe to Boston. But there's a lot more that we need to do, that we are doing to drive growth for our business. It comes at an interesting time because all of our hospitals are, at capacity. And so there are very specific areas where we want to acquire more patients. Sports medicine is one in particular, which really is the first time we've come together as a system to promote a service line. So you'll see us doing a lot more of that in the future.
At Mass General Brigham, we hear you. Sports medicine care driven by research and determination. Top specialists who understand your athletic dreams, goals, and the need to get back to them. Together, we'll write your comeback story.
Jennifer, you're in a really interesting situation, as all the others, is that you have a university name, and you're looking to do more to tie them more closely to the university. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, one of the things that we're focused on right now is the University of Oklahoma having reputation and being known for such a comprehensive health sciences center and moving up in Blue Ridge rankings, and the size of the healthcare research engine that we have now, which is the largest one in the state by more than 3 times. And so really demonstrating that leadership. It's becoming important around the fine point around the brand positioning between those two organizations, because we know that if we position it incorrectly inside of the university, it makes it a little bit harder for the health system and vice versa. And so we understand the symbiotic nature of those brands.
How are you all advancing the brand with partnerships, collaborations, sponsorships, things in the community? Jennifer, we'll start with you.
So for us, we have community partnership programming, and that lives inside of marketing and communications. It looks at everything from for-profit kind of brand marketing with partnerships like the Thunder and OU Athletics, all the way to the other end of the spectrum of charitable allocation and volunteerism. For us, we've drawn a very clear line in the sand at the outset of our brand launch, where OU Health is the brand, and it's always the brand, unless it's something very, very specific and centric to children, and then we'll use our children's hospital brand. That has created an enormous amount of repetition and consistency. And as we, as an organization, start to get tired of ourselves, I always tell people that's just about the time that the public's starting to catch on to it. So we've been fairly disciplined in not utilizing sub-brands in a lot of those. And then also, as we look at partnerships, how do they be fully integrated where it's a built-in partnership, not just a ship it and forget it, here's our logo and we move on. So a lot of programmatic elements where we're in the community doing different types of event work and bringing our experts to the table and things of that nature.
Thanks so much. Mark.
Thanks, Rhoda. We really have 2 parts of our marketing strategy or value proposition. One is to change the world through the research and innovations that we do and spread that across the globe. But the other part is really investing in our communities, caring for our communities. So we do quite a bit of work in areas of our community. We've invested a lot in mental health, food insecurities, lowering the cost of care. And we try to partner with a number of community organizations that support these priorities for us. Nationally, we've developed other partnerships to help drive awareness for us. YouTube is a good example. We have a partnership with YouTube where we're putting out videos featuring our experts and clinicians in high searched areas.
Sports partnerships have been an excellent way for us to get our name out there, our new brand, our story. three partnerships I'll mention in particular that have really been, again, marquee partnerships for us across our entire system. One is Walt Disney World, which we announced last year to really be their health partner. And we're building an entire health ecosystem for them so that when residents or guests come from around the world, that they can have the most magical vacation.
But Peter, how do we get to Neverland?
All you have to do is to think of a wonderful thought.
You have come a long, long way. I'm so proud of you.
One, two, three. Come on, everybody. Here we go.
We can fly! We can fly! We can fly!
The other is with the Orlando Magic, really working with them to extend the lifetime of the athlete on the court, and then taking those learnings and taking them to the general consumer, to the patient with cancer. How can we help them rebound? How can we help them excel? And then lastly, with the Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts, an amazing example of how the arts, the performing arts, and health can come together to heal people.
Thank you. One last question of you all. What's the best advice you can give people of going through not only the rebranding, but we're talking COVID has totally changed the way we do marketing and will change it forever. So Sharon, I'll start with you.
I would just say if you were going to do a rebrand, you've got to go all in. You have got to really invest. You can't just say, I'm going to just do it here and not do it there. You've got to really commit as an organization.
That's great. Mark.
I would say have a plan. The plan should be fact-based and clear on the principles behind the brand or behind the plan, but also build in some flexibility because there will be surprises, there will be twists and turns, and you need that flexibility in order to pivot quickly.
Jennifer.
I always say to not change brand for brand's sake, that branding and marketing is a business discipline that you can monetize and can be viewed as a revenue center and a growth vehicle for the organization. And I look at the strategic allocation of a marketing budget as investments in the market for growth, and that brand can really drive prestige, which makes you top of mind in that decision set. And so I have a reason for changing the brand beyond just wanting the logo to look different is probably my biggest piece of advice.
I'd like to share with you one final idea about brands. In March 2020, when the pandemic hit, many of us were really concerned that we were going to have a sub-pandemic. That is, people who would delay their care, and we were really concerned about this issue, and we kept seeing it happen. We saw debilitating strokes, we saw advanced heart disease, kids not getting immunized. We were really scared. So we approached 5 leading, really competitive health systems in Los Angeles County of 10 million people, Cedars-Sinai, UCLA Health, Keck Medicine of USC, Dignity Health in Providence, and said, let's brand together. Let's do campaigns each year to get people back to their health.
As Angelinos, we're all ready to get back to the things we love, and preventive care helps ensure that enjoyment for years to come. Because we have kids to raise, championships to win, people to inspire, dogs to walk, laps to swim, pictures to paint, cartwheels to spin, athletes to train, concerts to perform. But nothing is more important than your health. If you're putting off care, get back to your doctor and get back to the things you love. UCLA Health, Dignity Health, Cedars-Sinai, Providence, and Keck Medicine of USC are all united in making LA better together. Because we love a healthy LA.